we're back today with a really interesting show. Really good talking points. So today is all about reflection of Pride Month and some of the things that unfolded at Pride. And we have a very interesting panel here. We have someone who's transgender. We have someone who's gay and queer. We have a straight female and another straight male. So a very balanced panel here. So here's Pierce Morgan kicking it off with his panel discussing reflection on Pride and unpacking some of the things in terms of trans athletes and you know, in terms of children being at Pride and so forth and so on. So let's go into the video and unpack some reflection here from what the panel has to say. Let's get into it.
Today, just to mourn Pride Month and also show respect for Pride, for straight Pride, which we're currently now in. Here's the thing with the corporations. I think sometimes they're doing it for their employees, and that's really important. I think it's amazing that some companies are showing support
when there's no straight month for the straight employees?
Well, as we discussed before, the rest of the year is straight, Piers.
It's not though, is it? We don't celebrate being straight.
You celebrate being straight all the time. Just
there are no street parties for my
and
straightness.
Speaking over a queer person.
There's no straight
You're celebrating
flag.
being straight literally right now. And so it's important that companies do that and show their support for Pride, but a lot of the time it does feel insincere.
Actually, hang on, I'll come to us for a minute. Actually, why should companies do any of this? When did it become this thing that companies feel the need to lasso themselves to endless causes or campaigns? It never used to happen. When I buy a beer, I don't care that the beer company wants to put a rainbow flag out there to signal their virtue, particularly as they won't be doing it in the Middle East, where homosexuality is largely illegal, or in large swathes of Africa, or in places like that. So there's a hypocrisy and double standard with these global companies, where they'll only do it in places where actually it's easy.
Well, it's crumbs, isn't it? They're just giving us crumbs.
So why
and
accept
unfortunately,
that?
They're motivated by the people that work in the companies. It's not because of some great outcry from
I think sometimes it is to do with the people that work at the company.
No, it's not. It's all the time.
But why do companies?
That's always the case.
Companies always want to look good when they're not paying people enough money, or
well, I mean, that's a side issue. But like, look at during BLM, I was getting emails from ice cream companies telling me how proud that they are that I'm black. First of all, how do they even know that? And secondly, how is that relevant? I think this idea that they can get away with doing pride flags in countries where it's not illegal, but then you see KFC not doing that in India or in sub-Saharan Africa is ludicrous. And it actually shows the moral depravity in these countries.
Well, it reminds me of the Just Stop Oil protesters.
So
you never see the Just Stop Oil protesters in China or India or Russia, where almost all the pollution is actually going on. So they don't dare do it where it's difficult. They just do it where it's easy pickings. They go and attack a Chelsea flower show or a cricket match or a football match.
Well, is that not a particular organisation?
Well, I'm just going to jump in here. I just want to make two quick points. One of it that, Pride, I work in a space of the cultural intelligence and corporate culture space. And I could tell you, a lot is motivated from the employees there, where they want, if they recognize they have, employees from various parts of the world, they want to celebrate certain things. And basically the employees have their own networks and they will ask to celebrate. The companies more or less, most of the times don't want to do it unless they're being asked by the employee. So I know that for a fact. I've been working in a space, I still work in a space where a lot of it's driven from internally. If it's a product placement stuff, that's market. I don't work in that area. So there could be, yes, there are two parts of it where these companies are pushing a lot of stuff on Pride and saying, hey, look at us, we celebrate Pride and all of that. On the top of the point on going to what Pierce is making is that they're only doing it, it's easy to do it in countries like America, Canada, and Europe, because of freedom of speech and they're able to express themselves and do that. you have to remember one thing. It comes down to the local law, the law of the land. If in the UK or Europe or US, it's legal for companies to do these things, they will do it. So even if it's driven by the employee, or even from a marketing perspective, they always check with legal. If they don't, they will pay out a fat check or get their business striked or closed down, whatever. The fact is, legal department will not let you do something unless it is they sign off, right? So for me, the point of them saying that, oh, they don't do it in the Middle East, no, because it's illegal over there. It's illegal, and any legal team will tell you have to respect the laws of that the laws of that land. So why would you go and tell your employees to celebrate Pride in the Middle East? Then when it's illegal over there, you're opening them up to be prosecuted by the law and by people. So they get arrested, they get thrown in jail, as your employee for celebrating because they follow your directive of saying, hey, our company said we can celebrate because they're doing the same in New York or they're doing the same in Los Angeles. No, you have to pay attention to the risk you put in your employees at, or your organization, your brand. So yeah, I think it's not like they're weak or they don't have they're not serious about doing it in these places. It's just that they can't. The legal team within that organization will advise them not to break the local laws, because if you do that, you're putting your business as a bigger risk because you broke the law of that land. If it's acceptable, they will do it because there's no backlash or anything like that. So I don't see their point as the companies are showing as they're truly, it's not a foregone conclusion when it comes to virtual signaling in terms of using that term, is that they just operate and do these things where they're allowed to do it. And that's the end of it. No one is not like they're not brave enough to go and do it in the Middle East. If you do it and you think of how much it's going to cost you, what is going to cost your employees, and do you want that? No. So they do where is acceptable, basically.
Things which can forge genuine equality and fairness for trans people, which is what we should all aspire to get, right?
Exactly. I
mean, on that point, though, given you've not been on Uncensored before, we've debated this a lot with other guests, and particularly James. How do you feel, given that trans people want fairness and equality, how do you feel about the issue of trans athletes in women's sport, given that it's so obviously, to me and many other people, unfair and unequal?
Oh, here we go. Well, let's leave it to the experts. The different associations have agreed on different standards for different sports. It's all very relative. A recent study actually found that we're too harsh on trans people in sports and require too long of a transition to a point where the equivalent cisgender person would be at a disadvantage. So it's complicated. It needs to be drawn out by the actual sports authorities rather than politicians or pundits.
So if a 6'5" 230-pound biological male boxer puts their hand up and says, I would like to compete in women's boxing, would you be happy with that?
There are 6'5", 300-pound cis women too. Can they not compete?
They don't have the same physiology as a biological male. They don't have the same lung capacity.
They often can.
They haven't got the same muscle mass. No, they haven't. This is the whole point of the debate, is that it's not just about taking less testosterone. You have as Caitlyn Jenner has articulated very well, you have an inbuilt superior physiological advantage over biological females. That's the problem. Now, I want trans athletes...
Not necessarily. Estrogen... Look, estrogen absolutely wreaks havoc on our muscular systems, on our ability to perform in sports. And there's a reason that the rules are so strict, because it does greatly affect our capacity to participate.
Well, we'll disagree.
Yeah, I think this is where a lot of the backlash against the so-called trans community comes from, because we all agreed on that first point, that this is pandering and this is companies trying to make money and so on. But when people start coming to arguments about biological males competing in female sports, and by the way, notice the conversation only happens in one direction, and there's a specific reason for that. Nobody is concerned about men's sports or boys' sports. And that is because we're biologically different. And I just think that this is the reason why this conversation has raged on for so long. It's these type of ridiculous, frankly, demands that affect women, affect half of the population, particularly those who play sports. And that's where people just get lost. And I think that's where a lot of the backlash or resentment actually is stemming from. I think in the West, most people at this point don't really care. Go ahead.
I'm going to go. I'm the only trans person here. This isn't about sports. It's about a gateway for the right to begin banning trans people from access to certain programs.
I'm not right-wing.
That's not true.
I'm not right-wing. So how do you figure that?
No, it's
well,
not.
you
It's
certainly
not a
have
left-right.
right-wing views on trans
it's not a
folks.
left-right.
I don't have right-wing views on trans folks. I just said to you, I want trans people to have fairness and equality and the same human rights as everybody else.
And even if you don't personally consider yourself on the right, it's still a gateway into banning trans people.
No, I don't want to ban trans people. I would like trans people to either compete against their own biological sex, which seems to me the easiest thing to do, or they compete in a new section altogether of trans athletes. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, so a new separate but equal league is what you're saying.
Can I jump in here? The solution for this is very simple, and we've had the solution, as far as I know, for about a century. And this is simply to have an open sports league and a female-only sports league. A lot of what people call men's sports is not even explicitly men's sports. Anyone is allowed to participate, but because of the biological and physiological advantages men have, if you take the fastest, the strongest people in the world, the best endurance, they're all going to end up being men. That's how it's going to stack up, which is why if you want females to be able to participate in sports, you need to have a separate league because they can't compete in an open competition against men.
I agree. Let's move on, though, because there's another part of Pride I wanted to talk to you about. And I'll start with you, James, on this. That there is a suggestion that it's jumped the shark. And the reason for that, and we've got some examples of this, in Seattle, a convoy of completely naked bike riders and roller skaters had some questioning just how family-friendly the event was. You've got kids there watching this. In San Francisco, Pride had a fetish zone where a man lying in an inflatable pool of urine, where attendees were encouraged to urinate on him. Other booths featured participants getting spanked, whipped, and initiating sex acts on each other, all in public.
Pride Month is finally over, and what a month it was. Let's look at some of the highlights, starting in Toronto, where these lefties were losing it at what was apparently a family-friendly Pride event.
Look at all of that nudity.
Remember the good old days when first world cities had public indecency laws? I miss those days. Yes, some dude in a Bugs Bunny mask dangling his doodle in a Pride rally. Not sure what pride there is in that or this. And in San Francisco, where anything goes nowadays, we had several school districts take young kids along to Pride rallies. And this one, look at this clip. You can clearly see a completely naked man in the front row watching kids march.
Exactly what I said. There could be perverts there. Sex offenders. Watch this. He's butt naked.
And staying in San Francisco, there was plenty more depravity and lefties losing it.
Look at these people.
And if you're wondering why police didn't intervene? Well, listen to what these officers had to say.
And there's kids, wandering around the event. I'm not sure on San Francisco's laws or California's laws. Is it legal for nudity to be presented in front of kids?
Nudity is legal, yeah, within certain boundaries.
What are the boundaries? Do you know?
Coupled with a lewd act. Yeah, anything coupled with a lewd act or anything being done for sexual gratification that involves other people. Basically.
Okay, but this event wouldn't be considered for sexual gratification.
No, if they're walking around and it's out, that's right. That'd be different than if they're masturbating.
Okay.
So it's fine as long as they're not masturbating, if they're parading around, dancing suggestively in front of kids naked, that's okay in San Francisco. But it's not just San Fran. Let's go to that other lefty heartland, New York City, and see how Pride celebrations went there. You know what? There are a growing number of gay people, men and women, disowning this whole movement or calling out the victimhood mentality, including this young woman.
I recently got asked the question of, do I think that there will ever be true equality between gays and straights? When I say that, I stop dead in my tracks because I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And I'm not even gaslighting them. I don't know what you're talking about. I feel truly equal to my straight counterparts, okay? I can do every single thing a straight person can do. I can get married, I can adopt kids, I can buy a house, I can buy a car, I can have a job. Is there something I'm missing? Because last I checked, I'm not being thrown off a rooftop for being gay. Not in this country. We are equal, babe. You have all your rights. Being misgendered has nothing to do with rights. It has to do with entitlement and narcissism, okay? We have the same rights as straight people.
And in Toronto and New York, the politics of Palestine and Israel took over with queer, as they call themselves, protesters preventing the parade from progressing along its designated route by sitting in the middle of the road. So a lot of people saying that it's going too far. Now, James, I would say it does go too far when people do that.
I mean,
if you want to actually make Pride a family thing, which many people want it to be, how can you allow that kind of stuff?
You've given me a lot to respond to there, Piers. I would say in Germany right now at the Euros, there are English fans walking around with their dicks out, pissing in the street. I think if you go to Sweden, there are naked people everywhere, like in saunas, and it's completely fine.
You're
and normal.
comparing the fetish zone
I'm
San Francisco
that there's a naked bike ride in London very regularly, and kids walk past that naked bike ride. What you're doing is you're trying to make this a massive war against queer people, but actually this is just
I don't
all
want a war with queer people.
This is all people. And in San Francisco, where some of those people were naked at Pride recently, it's actually legal to be naked in events like that. So if you're taking your children to that, then that's on you. That's not on the queer community. And as I said, this isn't just queer people. This is all people.
I think you touched on a point that all sort of movements can devolve to become a congregation of the mentally unwell. Yes, that is fine. But each community must
unwell to be naked?
You're mentally unwell if you're walking out in public naked. Yes,
why is that mentally unwell?
Because you're mad.
So you're saying people in Sweden
you don't have clothes in your house
in saunas, is that mentally unwell?
Yeah, I think if you're leaving your house,
just because you have shame about your body.
Yes, I have shame. I'm sorry, I was raised properly. I have shame. I don't leave my house naked.
I was raised properly. I have shame.
Yeah, I have shame.
Terrible,
I have a sense of shame. I don't think that it's all about me and what I want. I actually think of the
people
public.
Aren't there because
well, here's the thing. Here's the point. You made a significant point, which is that there is a tendency for all movements to devolve into some sort of congregation of the mentally unwell, which is fine.
I never said that. That's literally not what I said.
I'm finessing what you're saying.
Right,
but the point here is that every group must take responsibility for the people within their own enclave, right? You don't expect us to tell these people that are getting naked in the name of Pride to tell them to put on
But they're
clothes.
not breaking the law.
It's disgusting. They are breaking. It's public indecency.
Okay.
That's not.
Hang on.
It's literally not.
It is not.
Let me bring in Eli on this. Eli, is there a line that Pride has crossed, as some people say? I mean, Jordan Peterson said about all this, there's a real tinge of narcissism, sexual narcissism about the whole Pride spectacle. Do people have the right to express their sexuality?
That is really bold.
Let me finish his quote. Do people have the right to express their sexuality the way they see it, to some degree, if it's consensual and among adults? But generally among human beings with any degree of civilized comportment whatsoever, it's a pretty damn private affair. Has he got a point, Eli?
No, he doesn't. It's Jordan Peterson. He never has a point.
He's a very smart man.
San Francisco was clearly demarked for adults. And I mean, personally, I was friends with some of the protesters that blocked New York City Pride. And what they're doing is blocking the human rights campaign Float, which is sponsored by Raytheon, who's currently committing genocide in Gaza. So they had their reasons for this, and there needs to be more context for all of these. On a broader level, we're not responsible for every member of our group. This is how the right latches on to our different identity categories and our different social movements to try to demonize all of us for the actions of a few that might be a little.
What about those who are not on the right, Eli, like me? I'm not on the right. I'm a liberal.
You do that to people on the right all the time.
I'm a liberal who just sees endless acts of self-harm by the.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just jump in here. The thing that, listen, I work in this space in terms of corporate culture. So as I mentioned before, and when it comes to Pride Month, the employees want to celebrate it, so you allow that to happen as an organization. Necessarily as the whole organization will be involved or get behind it. Those individuals who identify or raise their hand and say they would like to celebrate because they're part of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, when it comes to Pride itself, yes, Pride has gone really strange. It's gone to the extreme now because, all of these, this never happened 15, 20 years ago. It's happening now, right? These type of behavior is seen. You can't have kids. Listen, I'll come back to my point. I'm all for anyone in the community celebrating, expressing themselves in a decent manner, right? Now, going back to what I was about to say is that you can't have kids at a parade and you riding bike butt naked like that, grown men with their genitals outside. That is, you're exposing yourself to a minor. Now take that. You can't just hide behind it. Oh, it's Pride, so it's okay. Because then you could open up a gateway for all manifestation of sick behaviors. Because we know if a sex offender, a registered sex offender, because there's the gateway. A registered sex offender could literally do that because this is what they get caught for. It's just that they don't have the word Pride behind them, right? A registered sex offender could go to Pride, claim they're gay, get exposed and expose themselves in front of kids because that's the proximity, the close proximity, because sex offenders, they want to get in close proximity with minors. So when you do that, you open up a gateway for all hell to break loose, right? You then have, if I would say a straight person were to do that in front of kids, you're going to jail. Period. No discussion. You expose yourself to a minor, you go into jail, and rightfully so, right? So there is no judge going to say, oh, well, it's Pride Month. You can do that. I know they're saying, oh, this is a designated area to do that. But it's still, if a parent takes their kid to see Pride because it's a parade, if you're parading in a public area, the public has a right to pass by, take a look, whatever. You still cannot expose yourself. You have to regulate these people. You got to say, okay, you could express yourself, but you got to be fully clothed. You could wear as many colors that you want. You could dress up as whatever you want, but you cannot expose yourself to kids, to minors. That is where I draw the line. And I, as much as I can support the LGBTQ plus community, I have friends, I have colleagues, I have peers. Lots of people I know are in the community, and they are so upset with Pride right now. They don't even want to. Every time Pride comes and you're about to talk to them about Pride, they start shouting and screaming at you because they don't want to hear it, because they're disgusted with some of the behaviors. Now, again, if there's no regulations, you will find sick, twisted people using that gateway as Eli said. They will use that gateway to go in there and say, oh, well, I might be a sex offender, but, oh, in Pride, I could expose myself. and it's no one, there's no drawback. No police could arrest me because it's legal for me to do it within these couple blocks and claim I'm celebrating Pride Month, right? So that's why I have a problem. I think the LGBTQ plus community and those who are organizing Pride needs to regulate this. They need to start putting, you can't have sex area where people are spanking and fisting and whatever they were doing, all these really these adult stuff, that sexual, highly sensitive sexual acts should be behind closed doors with consenting adults. Likewise, anyone who's an adult in a house with their kids, no parent go and perform sexual act in front of their kids. So why would you do it in front of someone else's child? And in a public place of all places, like as if they don't have a right to be there, and they say, oh, under the disguise of, okay, it's Pride, so we could do it in this zone, in this month, and you got to be okay with that. No, I'm not okay with that. I think this needs to stop and this needs to be regulated. But let's hear what they have to say. But I don't agree with what's his name, because James always going to one. He doesn't listen. He's all pro. He always use these, we're under attack, and make these outlandish claims. Just start screaming like crazy. And I remember when the lady said she has shame, and he's like, oh, you got shame. What he doesn't understand is shame is a regulator, is a tool to know there's a line there, because if you cross the line, you should be ashamed of yourself. So it's almost like another example like this. You run up on an elderly person and punch them in the head. When everyone knows that that's an elderly person, they can't defend themselves, and you should respect your elders. It's a societal norm across every single country, right? It's an acceptable norm across all cultures. Respect your elders. So if you do that, everyone will turn and say, you have no shame. They are asking, where's your regulator? Where is that tool, that moral compass to regulate that you shouldn't do this to an elder? So I don't understand. He doesn't understand what she's meant by shame. She's basically saying, I go outside, I make sure I'm clothed. Now, he's talking about, he's using Sweden and all these places. He's using nudist beach and all these. These have been established for decades. A nudist beach has been established for decades, and they're in secluded areas. Everything he's talking about, these are secluded. Talk about soccer fans. If you're in the U.S., the Euros is happening, like Copa America is happening, just finished. And football fans, they get drunk. These are drunk male walking around trying to urinate in a corner. So they walk around with their penis outside because they're filled with alcohol. They're not even thinking, right? And this is normal. You see this in London, you see this in New York, you see this anywhere when an adult male is full of alcohol, or even adult female, and they need to use their bathroom, they will go and do it any way they see a spot, because the alcohol has gotten to their head. They're not thinking straight. But here in Pride, he's picking apples and oranges. Here at Pride, people are very conscious of what they're doing. So I don't, he loves to slip all this stuff in about attack on the community. But I do not agree with, as much as I support the community, I do not agree with these type of behaviors here.
Trans lobby, when actually I'm with you. I want you to get fairness and equality, but I don't want you eroding other people's rights.
You keep on saying this, and yet your actions speak differently.
What actions? What action?
Trying to get trans people banned from sports, comparing.
I don't want them banned
trans
from sports.
women
Hang
to
on,
people
don't misquote
identifying
me.
as animals.
I don't want trans people banned from sports. I want them to be disallowed from competing against biological women. Different thing. I want them to be able to compete in sport.
And that I agree with too, 100%. I agree with it. Trans males should not, so trans women should not be in the same sport with biological females, period. Trans women should not be in the same sport competing for the same medals, trophies, whatever it is, with biological female. It's simple science. There's a massive disadvantage. You're still a male. You're still a male competing, and everyone, as Pierce touched on before, you have that engine in you. Caitlyn Jenner, who's a trans woman, said that, and she is an athlete. We all know when she, her previous life before she transitioned was Kris Jenner, and she was an athlete, an Olympic athlete. So she knows what she's talking about. And why wouldn't they listen to her? Because it doesn't fit their whole agenda. So they will exclude what another trans person is saying because it doesn't fit the narrative they're trying to project. So yeah, I totally agree with Pierce. No, they shouldn't compete. Trans women should not compete with biological females in any sport, period.
Of their own gender.
Or their own sex. They should compete with people of their own sex.
I think I just saw her.
That is exactly the type of talking point that in 20 years we're going to be looking back at and regretting.
Really? So
No, we're not. I have to stop that because you see how Pierce got in there? And people who gets into this conversation don't understand sex, biological sex, and gender are two different things. And I love how you see when she paused there, because when Pierce said that, she paused and she's like, because he made a clear distinction. You either compete as a trans woman, you compete with those who are your biological sex. So you're born male basically, and you identify as a woman. That what makes you transgender. You're saying women, a woman gender, the gender of woman, the category of woman. That's your gender. You identify as a woman. That will make you a trans woman. You're a man who transitioned to be a woman. In Eli's case, right? So Pierce is saying, so if you want to compete in any sport, you were born a male. So biologically, you're male, so you have to compete against other biological male, period. Not in the gender category, but in the biological sex category. And that's what they don't want. And that's where the argument is here and the standstill.
You think in 20 years' time in the Olympics? So to be clear then, in the Olympics, you would have just, open Olympics?
Open season.
Sex is irrelevant? Gender irrelevant? Everyone just competes against each other?
Absolutely.
I would too.
Really? So do you understand?
Well, everyone just can.
Eli, do you understand that by doing that, you literally end the Olympics? It's all over because only men would win. Do you understand that? That's why we separate them.
I don't want to take this down.
No, hang on. I want Eli to respond. You literally are destroying the Olympics for anyone who's not a man.
Well, that's a very grandiose vision of it, but
not really. Not really. If you look at the times and the results of men Olympians against women Olympians, you will see that in almost, I think, 98% of all the events, men are so far ahead of women on speed, on power, and every other discipline. Women would never win a medal again at the Olympics if you had your way. Is that what you want?
That's very sexist.
No,
do you know that the first woman
hang on, it's not sexist.
Do you know the first woman that
hang on, James,
swam the channel?
I'll come to you. It is not sexist. It is a fact. It's why we separate the sexes. When Megan Rapinoe finished her career playing the soccer team, American women's soccer team, she then said that she'd be happy to see a trans woman competing in the women's team, right? Which is fine, because it wouldn't take her place. But if you allowed trans women, football players, soccer players, to compete, and enough of them began to do this, there would be no biological women left in the women's national soccer team, because they would be physically
trans
superior.
People already have the right to do that, and you're not seeing the results that you say you would be seeing.
Yeah, but you see, you and James both have this wonderfully quaint notion that if you open up the Olympics for everyone, that women would continue to win medals. They wouldn't. They'd win nothing.
Obviously, this is complicated, Piers.
It's not complicated.
No, listen,
it's not complicated. It's why we separate them. Literally, when Megan Rapinoe's national women's soccer team played the Dallas under-15s, they lost 8-2. They were under 15-year-old boys.
The first woman to swim the English Channel, the first woman to do that, beat the men's record by over 2 hours.
He slowed down.
Yeah. So so here we go again. So I totally agree with Pierce and I forgot the name of the panels. The black guy and the girl. It's common sense. I totally agree with their points they're making. It's not an attack on the LGBTQ plus community. People just want to make a clear distinction. If you are born biological male and you transition to a woman, then you should be only competing in any sporting event with with other biologically born males, basically. So if your sex at birth is male, biological male, regardless whether you want to transition, it's your business. But if you do so, you still should compete with other male athletes, not with biological females. And that's the end of the argument, right? My thing is, I think they need to regulate. I'm not so much worried about the competition in the sport, because I know that's really minor. Maybe it will be devastating for those who are athletes and stuff like that. But for me, I'm more concerned with the state of pride. Pride is over. It's gone until next year. But the state of it, having kids at Pride where they're being exposed to adults who are naked and I'm talking naked, fully naked, and adults who are involved in sexual acts and acts of pleasure and all these things. I think it needs to be regulated, and they should put a ban on that, because because Pride is all about inclusion. Remember, it's inclusion, it's diversity, it's all about that, right? This is what happened with diversity and inclusion. People use these concepts and don't know how to apply, because every time they talk about inclusion, they exclude somebody else. But here's something. You can't use it and call it inclusion just so that if somebody's from the community, LGBTQ, they are allowed to do these things, like walk around in the parade naked in front of kids. But then you're saying, oh, if someone who's a sex offender, they're not allowed to do it. Also, other straight males are not allowed to be butt naked in front of kids, minors, period. I agree. None of it should happen. But what I'm saying is, you can't hide one group behind Pride and say it's okay for them to do that because it's all about who they are. They're expressing themselves. But two other groups, such as those 6 perverted, twisted people who like minors, and a straight adult male doing that in front of kids, no, it's unacceptable. These are disgusting things, and we need to protect kids. We need to protect minors. We need to protect them from adults who are using these little categories or gray areas to finagle their way into doing these things, these acts in front of them. It is uncalled for. It should not be accepted, and it should be outlawed. It should be banned. And I call in the U.S. senators and legislators to put law in effect, regulate this stuff. You can't say it is regulated when there's no pride, and because if any other person who is not LGBTQ plus were to commit these or perform these acts or anything like that, they will be in trouble. That's it. I love your thoughts on this in the comments. Please like, subscribe, help me grow the channel. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.